Hello, welcome back. This is Craig. Today we're going to continue building our Kids Club magazine cover. We're going to talk about drawing shapes and adding gradients to them. Over here to highlight the type and also to separate it from the background photo, I added these colored gradient bars, these rectangles. Well, I guess one's colored and one is white. And they blend off to be opaque over here, so the opacity is really in the gradient as well. So it highlights them but still allows us to see a little bit of the background. So drawing shapes in Photoshop is pretty simple. Let's start with the shape down here at the bottom. This purple bar. I'm going to type M, which will take me to my marquee tool, and this will take me to the rectangle marquee. And if I wanted to do the purple bar on the bottom, I would simply come over here to my layers palette, click new layer, and I can label this by double clicking purple bar at bottom. I would come over here and I would simply draw a rectangle. Now I would do this over top of here so I can get the right size, but we're going to do it over here for demonstration purposes. And once I have the area that I have selected, and this is the layer that I'm on, I will simply sample the purple color. Now, I did initially sample this purple color from this little boy's shirt, and you can certainly do that if you want. That's where I got it from. Now, initially, I did have the brand color here in the purple, but initially I got that from kind of doing the shirt and the logo at the same time. So to fill this on the logo, or to fill this on the layer, I simply type Option Delete, which is my quick fill key, which will fill this selection on this layer with the color that I have in the foreground. Option Delete. Now you see there's this weird little piece down here. That is simply a bleed knockout that I have over here. So that's not interfering in any way. I can turn that on and off. So we'll move this up and you can see that now I have this purple bar, and we would add type to that afterward. Now a little more complex would be these rectangles up here. So I'm going to go to create a new layer again, and I will label this pink bar and go to my M, type M, marquee tool, and I will create this. And if you want to, you could draw right over top of this to see about how far we want this pink gradient to go. And then you can just move it over here so you can see what I'm doing. So now with this, I sampled her shirt. So you can go over here and you can click on the eyedropper tool if you want, or click I. I'm in the habit, because I use the brush a lot in Photoshop, by typing B really fast and then hold down my Option key, and it allows me to sample. I guess it's just something I've gotten the habit of doing. And then V brings us back to our selection tool. Now I want to make sure I'm on the layer. I have the selection, or the selected area that I want, and I have my color in the foreground. Option Delete will quick fill that with the pink. Now I have the pink bar, but I want it to have this gradient in it. So I'm going to double click on the gray area over here to bring up my layer style palette. I'm going to come down here to Gradient Overlay. And now you can see it's putting a gradient overlay over this. Now the default that it has here is using the white. To change this, I simply click on the little gradient here. And these colors down here is what I want to use to start with. So if we look at the original, I have it blending from pink on the right to basically opaque or transparent on the left. So in my gradient editor here, I'm going to click on this and double click on that, sorry, and I will sample, see my little eyedropper tool, sample that pink, and I will double click on, click OK, I'll double click this, and I will just keep that at white, which is fine. This up here, this will set your opacity. So this is at 100% because I want it to be the darkest pink. And this over here is set to 0 because I want it to be basically 0% or a full tint. So I'll click OK here. And now I will click OK here. Now, you notice nothing really happened here. Well, what I have to do is it still has on this layer, I still have the rectangle filled with pink. So let's go back in here and go to my gradient layer. And you will see that, yeah, I guess I did everything right. But what I have to do is, there's two places you can do this. In your blending options, where it says fill opacity, that's the fill, that is that original pink. I can drop that. And notice when I drop it, now I see my gradient because I've taken all of the pink that I initially filled the box with out. Now I can also do that up here below opacity. I can just take this fill and drop it all the way to 0. And now I have what I want. So if I click on this layer and I move it over, you'll see that I have pink on one side, gradient in the middle, and blending into basically nothing on the other side and letting the background show through. So now we'll go back to my marquee tool. I'm going to create a brand new layer, and I'm going to slide this down below because the white rectangle is below it. Visually, I like to have that layer below. I'm going to do white bar, label that white bar, and I am going to draw a white gradient over here. I'm going to fill this with white. Now remember that white is in the background here. So I'm on the layer that I want called white bar. I have a selection here that I want to fill with white. If white is in my background, I simply use Command Delete. And Command Delete fills it. You can see it on the layer here. Now I will do the same steps. I will come in here, add a gradient overlay, and instead of using pink here, I'll double click, I'll add white. I already have white over here, so this should be fine. And I'll click OK, and then I will reduce the fill. Now you can't see anything happening over here, but when I grab both of these, just holding my Shift key down and drag them over, you will see that I have a pink bar and a white bar. They're on separate layers, but they have the same gradient. I notice that that white is off just a little bit here, so I'm going to zoom in, and with my arrow keys, I'm going to nudge that so they are perfectly aligned. Zoom back out. So that is how I created these two bars with the gradients to help separate the background from the type. Let's drag these back over here, both of them. And now the last shape on here that we have to draw is this simple circle on the top. So I'm going to go to my marquee tool, but I'm going to go to the second one and select elliptical marquee tool. I'm going to draw a circle. And remember that if we hold our Option key down, it'll draw from the center. If we don't, it'll draw from the upper left-hand corner. If we hold our space bar down, we can drag it over top of this, and we'll try to match that size. So I'm going to do that, and that's about the size we want. Right? I'm going to split the white. So there, that's about the size that I want. So I'll move this back over here so you can see it. Now, first I'm going to fill that with purple. So I'm going to sample the purple that I used down here, so the brand color is the same. Don't forget to create a new layer, and on this I'm going to just I'm going to type title logo circle. On this layer, with the purple color selected and my marching ant selecting the area I want to fill, I'm going to quick fill that with Option Delete. Now I have that circle filled with purple. Command D gets rid of my marching ants. Now if you notice, I don't have that white line around there, which I want to have. It also has a drop shadow on it too. So to get those effects, I'm simply going to double click on the layer, and I will get my layer styles up here. I'm going to choose to put a stroke around it. Sorry, I forgot what it was called there. So on the stroke, you can see it adds the stroke, and if I click here, it will say what color do I want? Well, I just want white. And how wide or how thick do I want it? You can see I'll bump it up. I don't remember exactly, but I think I can match that with probably about a 10. That looks good. And now I have the circle with that white stroke on it. The last thing I did is, if you zoom in here, you can see I have a drop shadow on here. This can also be done in your layer styles. So I'm going to double click on this again, and being able to see these two, I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. You see I have another option in here, which is drop shadow. So I'll click on drop shadow and then select that. And you'll see that the drop shadow starts to appear. I have the drop shadow on the lower right, so I'm going to change my light angle here to about 122 so it angles down this way. And then I'm going to increase the size just so I can see what it looks like. There it is. And then I want to darken it, so I'm going to increase the opacity. If I go all the way, it's dark. I think I usually use about like an 85 or an 80. We'll start there. It's set to multiply for the blending mode. What I like about that is it doesn't just put a dark black color on here. It actually darkens the color underneath it a little bit and adds black to that. So I get a darker pink here and a darker green up here, not just black over top of it. Looks a little more natural. The distance here is how far away the drop shadow is. You can see we move it down. I move it too far. There we go. It slides down. I don't usually make it too far away. I like to see it a little bit on the top, coming a little bit on the top. So in this case, we'll move it maybe like 20. And then the spread is how much of a gradient you have here, how smooth that is. If you increase the spread, the drop shadow gets a really hard edge with no feather, kind of like the feather in the brush tool. So we'll pull that down and probably only do about maybe 9 or 10. I have this thing where I like to use, if I can, 20, 10, 60, so they're even numbers. Just something that I do. You don't have to do that. And you can see that what I have here is a little bit darker than what I have on the original one. So I'm going to back that off just a little bit, lighten it up, maybe to more like a 50. And that's a little bit softer. So I click OK, and you can see all of these layer effects show up down here. If I want to see what it looks like without the stroke, I turn that off. Without the drop shadow, I can make that invisible, or I can make all of them invisible at the same time. So these all stay attached to the layer. You can close them up here. You see the little FX in here to show that there is layer styles applied to this layer. And now I can move this around wherever I want, and it brings that drop shadow with it. So that is how to draw shapes in Photoshop, the shapes that we will need for this magazine cover, and how to add gradients to them using the layer styles, and also how to add strokes and drop shadows with the layer styles. Next up, we will deal with adding the typography to the magazine cover and show you how we style that and colorize it. Thank you.